Is cancel culture a force for good? How you guys doing? My name is James Sadie Jr. Good to see you guys again. Today we'll be talking about cancel culture, an intro to the honor shame systems of the East as well. So it's not good for man to be alone. God designed us as incredibly social beings. We find our strength in community. Iron sharpens iron in the same way man should sharpen man. One of the things we lack within our generation is good community, not just community, because you can have bad community, but we lack good community. One of the things that God desires is for us to have His kingdom here on earth, as we say in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. He desires for His kingdom to be reflected here on earth. And part of any kingdom, any form of government, is community. Community starts with the family nucleus, a father, mother, children. And that expands out to the community or the neighborhood that you live in. So a collection of families, you have a community. The reason why I'm starting by talking about community is because of this. A man who's a part of good community, just based on the good people that are around him, he's less prone to make these kind of catastrophic mistakes, and he's more prone to confess to the mistakes that he's made in his past. The kind of community that we need to be a part of is one where, number one, you're challenged to be a good person, a virtuous person, a selfless person, and two, where you're held accountable for your mistakes. We don't allow each other to slip, to damage the lives of others, and just push it under the rug. The reason why this cancel culture is kind of taken flight in the way that it has is because we have a lot of communities, but we have very few good communities. We have a lot of people who suffer from abuses, who carry around very traumatic experiences, and it's not fair because to them, they've been robbed of their opportunity to heal. They've been robbed of their opportunity to receive justice. Because that's what you do when somebody has been sexually assaulted. They've had their purity stolen from them. And when nothing happens, they've been robbed of the opportunity to heal. So what they end up doing is they end up rebuilding their identity without ever addressing the trauma of their past. And many people live on their whole entire lives and they never ever reveal that they've been through such a traumatic experience. Because on a psychological level, it's easier to just bury that trauma than to actually dive back into the hurt of that season in your life and recollect the facts from that situation. Very, very traumatic experience, because for somebody to do that, you now have to come to grips with some very unanswerable questions, like why was it me? Why was my purity taken from me? Where were my protectors? And where was justice? And that's kind of what cancel culture is kind of alluding to, is what about justice? Where is my justice? So number one, the cure for this is good community. Like I said again, a good community, you are less prone to make these mistakes, and you're more prone to be held accountable for your actions. So let's kind of talk about the origins, the definition, the pros and cons of cancel culture. So cancel culture is a form of boycott or public shaming of a person who's shared a questionable, unpopular opinion or has violated a social norm. So we see that happening with old tweets that are popping up, old pictures that are resurfacing. So in regards to the origins of cancel culture, the answer is it's actually been around a lot longer than we realize. Cancel culture stems from an Eastern system known as honor shame. Um, the honor shame system basically is rooted in the East, specifically Middle Eastern nations. And so basically the honor shame system compels you to do that which maintain or increases your place in a community. And of course that which violates that honor shame system, anything that's in violation of that, any of those social norms, anything that decreases your standing in a community is frowned upon. And depending on the severity of that situation, can be punishable by death as well. You can look at apostates. So what's the difference? So the opposite of this honor shame system that exists in the East is what we have here in the West, known as the innocence guilt system, or what we like to call due process of law, which is afforded to us in our Constitution. So due process actually assumes you're innocent until you're proven guilty. It doesn't matter what the accusation is. You have a right to a fair and speedy trial. You have a right to be tried by a jury of your peers. You have the right to representation. So the difference with an honor shame system is it allows for your community members to be your judge, jury, and executioner in a kangaroo court. So basically, is the moment there's an accusation, the damage will be done first. You won't necessarily get a guaranteed chance to prove your innocence. It doesn't matter. So what we're dealing with today is not something that's unique to our generation. This is something that Christ himself has had to walk through as well. So Christ, of course, living in the Middle East, he was born in a culture that honored the honor shame system. So we see that all through his ministry, whether it's the woman who was accused of adultery, and where he famously said, "He who was without sin, let him cast the first stone." The community members in that story were her judge, jury, and executioners. She didn't have representation. She didn't get a chance to plead her case. You also see cancel culture evident in the man who was born blind. Christ famously heals him and gives him his sight back after he placed mud over his eyes, had him wash it out, and when the high priest challenged him on who healed him, and they wouldn't believe his story in the first place, they called his parents, and their parents responded in a very unique way by saying, "He's of age, you should ask him." The reason they responded this way is because to be canceled in that time meant you were barred from entering the synagogue. The synagogue was the epicenter of all culture and customs in those days. And if you are barred from the synagogue, you are now placed at the bottom of the totem pole. So that's basically social suicide. So the reason they responded by deflecting the question by saying, "He's of age, ask him," is because they were afraid of being canceled in their culture. You see him stand directly in opposition of their cultural way of thinking. He did not subscribe to this idea of cancel culture. So in conclusion, that brings us back to the question. So is cancel culture a force for good? And to that I say it depends. If we're afforded the idea of due process, then yes. If we subscribe to the idea of the honor shame system, then I'll say no. But there's a pathology to all things. There's a way you can socially eradicate bad ideas, and that's with good ideas. We have to create community that cultivates good ideas, that rewards virtuous behavior. We have to go back to the idea of building strong communities, raising up men who stand up for their families, who are sacrificial, who have a vision for their children. We need civilized society that believes in protecting, because we need our women to thrive. An indicator of any healthy nation is how well the women are treated in that nation. So I believe we need to build strong community first. That way people are held accountable. That way people are less prone to commit these atrocious acts. Um, and of course, and ultimately, we have children that can grow and live in great environments. So there are people can feel open enough to say, hey, this happened to me. And there's people who can respond appropriately by saying, we're going to bring this to justice. We're going to bring this to light. We're going to bring this to the community, and this will be taken care of. Because we don't want people to suffer in silence. We want people to be heard. We want people to be known. We want you to know that you matter. Again, my name is James Seddy Jr. This is The Furnished Mind. Deuces.